Gib Bulloch, writer, speaker, facilitator. Welcome to Being Human.
Thank you very much. Great to be here, Richard.
It's an absolute pleasure. And so I'd like to start with your book, The Intrapreneur, Confessions of a Corporate Insurgent. So perhaps let's start with that term. What do we mean by intrapreneur? And then give us some of the story of how you did that at Accenture.
Crumbs, straight in there with the intrapreneur. Well, I had no idea what an intrapreneur was until about 2007, when a person who's now become a very good friend, Maggie Dupre, called me up out of the blue and said she was doing a piece of work on intrapreneurship with John Elkington, one of my great heroes that some people will know. And she said, "We think you are one of these people." And she explained it to me. I guess it's an entrepreneur, a social entrepreneur. It doesn't always have to be social, but this was the context. But a social entrepreneur inside a large organization. In this context, again, a big multinational organization that I was working in, Accenture. But it could be in a government body, it could be in an NGO. And someone who is, I guess, swimming against the tide a little bit, trying to be a little bit of a risk taker, troublemaker, no doubt, and driving change bottom up. So that's what I guess an intrapreneur was, and that was around about 2007. And it's great to see how this movement has emerged over time. At the end of the day, you know, the labels aren't really that important. It's ultimately what you do,
right,
that counts. But anyway, we can get it. There'll be plenty of time to get more into what it was I was doing or not doing and trying to do.
Well, I mean, and it seems to me your story is a sort of perfect encapsulation of what we mean by intrapreneur and what you did at Accenture. It was a bottom-up movement where you created something kind of from nothing, which is what entrepreneurs do.
I led a team that created something from nothing.
Right.
I'm not going to sit on this couch. You get a disproportionate amount, I suppose, of the credit and put on a pedestal for starting something or the founder of something, and it's this kind of hero syndrome. I would stress at the beginning. Yeah, okay, no false modesty here. There was an idea, it came about, goodness knows from where, but then a team emerged around about this, and it is entrepreneurship, I would say, is very much a team sport.
Right. And actually, that's a very important point to make, isn't it? Because you're absolutely right. We focus on the hero. We seem to have a human need, right, to identify the hero and project something onto them. And
we're all heroes in our own life story, I believe. But it's how we collaborate, how we work together, how we bring complementary strengths. I mean, my God, companies would be really quite chaotic places if everyone wanted to become an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur in their organization. What we need is that blend of different, I think, capabilities, strengths, characters that can come together. And that's what I think I was very lucky in having a team that had that complementary thing. You know, a rugby team, if you chose only on size and strength, you know, it wouldn't be as effective. You know, you need these different sizes, shapes, abilities, speeds, and I think that's the same with teams in business as well.
Okay, but I'm interested in the moment. So what was so you're working in Accenture, you're a successful consultant, management consultant within Accenture. What's the moment when what you created? When did it start?
The epiphany, as I call it, and this is we'll jump into the past before the book or the triggers for the book, which came many years later. But if I take you to, I think it was March 1999, in London, where we are now, where I no longer work and live. But it was a kind of ordinary day. I was working in Accenture. I think, in fact, it was Anderson Consulting at the time. It's probably some brand police somewhere that will go loopy about me saying this. But I'd been there for a few years, working with your colleague, Audie. And it was great. You know, I felt I'd arrived. I was in this big business. I was amongst lots of bright people. I was earning a good salary. I had many of the trappings of success, the things we're told we should be striving for. You know, when I was a kid, I wanted to drive a fast car, a Porsche, and live in, in this fast lane of business and have plenty of money and jet set lifestyle. And I had many of these things. So
you had the porker.
I had the porker and other things like that, and you get it, and it's, you think, yes, great, tick. But there's something then, there's a voice in the head going, yeah, and what next? And so what? Do you want a new porker? And be a bit of a whatever, which probably many of your viewers are saying, yeah, whatever. Fair enough. I have that kind of inverse snobbery now as well, but people driving about their Porsches.
I've had a friend who had a Porsche who got rid of it because he got so much abuse.
Well, yeah, and again, this is back in 1999, so the times have changed a lot. The context has changed. Even back then, it was a little bit, there was definitely ostentatious, but things like the environment, climate change, these things were not being talked about. So it's a very different social and business context that we're in now. But back to this kind of, there was something missing for me. There was something, had these things, but is this really what I want to be doing the rest of my life? Is this the purpose of my life? And, it's funny because we think probably that the big changes in life are the set piece events of a death of a parent or a birth of a child or changing jobs or losing jobs. And they probably have a significant impact in your life. But for me, it's the smaller, seemingly insignificant things that can be catalytic triggers that can provoke a chain reaction of change. And for me, it was going to work on the underground, not the road to Damascus. It was the district line of the London Underground, reading the FT on this particular day. And I read an article. It's actually written by Peter Mandelson, the former Labour, New Labour chap. I think he was an ex-VSO volunteer, so it was something about VSO, voluntary service overseas, wanting more business people, more business skills in development. And it was a program that they had developed to go after business. It was really ahead of its time, I would say, because they weren't going looking for a check from business, which most charities do. It was saying, we want your people, we want access to your skills. We've got this program that we will borrow them for a period of time, 6 to 12 months. We'll give you them back, having used them to use their skills in a developing country context. And the demand was twice the supply at that time. They really needed more of these skills. And for me, it was an article, I remember it jumping out the page at me, and it was, wow, I had thought this whole development and giving and supporting people in less well-off countries was for other people. That was for doctors and nurses and teachers and do-goody people. And here was me, a business person in the London rat race, but they needed my skills. And yeah, it was then, that was the initial thing. I pulled it out of the pocket, pulled it out of the paper, put it in my pocket, forgot about it for a few months, and then it was probably the summer of 1999 that I called the number on the thing, and there's some quite funny memories of meeting a chap called Michael Shan, who was I've reconnected with him just a few weeks ago in London actually, which was fabulous. But he was the VSO guy running this program. We arranged to meet. I dressed down in jeans and hair shirt and wanted to sort of fit in with the NGO guy. He put on his best suit and came in, so it was there was a very funny first meeting. And then within a year I found myself in the Balkans as a volunteer on a sabbatical from Accenture. And the journey had begun.
Right. And what was your job in the Balkans? What were you there to do?
I basically said to VSO, I'll go wherever you need me. I'm more interested in the type of job and using my skills more than which country it's in. And I was into Macedonia just after the Kosovo War had finished, so this was around about September 2000. And I was working in a small UK government-funded enterprise support agency, one of 3 in the west of Macedonia. I happened to be in the ethnic Albanian west of Macedonia, where there was still some troubles broke out while I was there and after I left as well. But trying to help small businesses get access to credit, running training programs, but also trying to build the capacity of the local, small number of local business people to create a self-sustaining support agency that wouldn't need donor funding, that could sell its services and support staff. So that was my job, and I was there as on a sabbatical. I got a stipend, I think, to cover my mortgage. Accenture supported this program, kept my job open for me. But there was 90+% salary reduction from what my London salary was, and I'd never been more motivated in my life. I was fascinated by the work. I was here was something at last where I could see that my business skills and expertise could be put to good use in doing something that was benefiting not just the shareholders of a large client or me personally. It was of benefit to others, and it's like a drug, this whole purpose thing.
Right.
And, I reckon that was when I became an addict.
Okay.
Or subsequently a dealer, I guess. Purpose dealer. There you go.
Right. Purpose dealer. That sounds like another title for it.
Yeah, purpose dealer. Yeah, go for it.
And was there any part of you that was worried about, what about my progression? Because I come from a similar background. I was working at the same time for Arthur Andersen Business Consulting, which was sort of part of the same.
Yeah, they started to compete with one another,
exactly.
Which is why the divorce happened. But there you go.
But I found that my drug in that scenario was, how can I get to the next grade as fast as I can, or how can I outcompete the guy next to me to get an even higher rating? There was definitely that going on as a script, and I just wondered, did that completely go away for you, or perhaps it wasn't there to begin with?
No, it didn't completely go away for me then.
Right.
I kind of timed my departure so that I had just got a bit of a promotion up to the next level. So from a manager to what they call the senior manager, which is the partner in waiting stage. So the carrot of that partner and all that goes with it is there. And we are very programmed in consultancies, but in business in general, that you've got to be so focused on your career, what you're doing in your career, how things look, the optics of taking time out and things. But I was ready, and I had great support from the bosses I was working for at the time, and I thought I'll go and do this for a period of time, do some good, give back. Hate the phrase, and I just pat myself in the back and then go back into what I was doing before. Earn more money, get the next Porsche, and try and make partners. That was my intention at the time.
Okay, so there was still was it like, well, that track's on pause is sort of how you dealt with that?
Yeah, that I've made this next grade now, grade up, so now's a good time to take a step out, but fully intending to go back into the corporate greasy hole.
Okay, so you completed your stint there, and then what's next?
Well, I actually extended the stint there. I think I signed up for 6 months at the time. I stayed closer to a year. But I guess this was a real, maybe you call it a crucible moment. People have these crucible experiences. That might be a day, or it might be a week's experience, or it might be something that just triggers something in you. I had that crucible experience for more or less a year. You cannot go out of this comfort zone that I had been in, or a bubble, and we do tend to get ourselves into these nice cocoons and go into this incredibly different environment. Here was a country that was on the edge of Europe, a couple of hours flight, just in the northern border of Greece and Albania, and just south of Bulgaria. But I was going back 25 years in time, and high unemployment. Refugees had just come back into Kosovo, so there was still the sort of after effects of that. There was really strong ethnic tensions between the Slavic majority and a growing ethnic Albanian minority. Average wages would be, I don't know in today's money, but not much more than 50 to 100 euros a month. So you had this melting pot of things, and you saw the disadvantage, the poverty, maybe not as extreme as people would see in sub-Saharan Africa, but it has a profound effect on you. I would lie about what car I I had back home when I was asked by my colleagues in the centre. I was too embarrassed to say what I had. They were wondering why I was there. Had I lost my job or been sacked, because who on earth would want to come to here when I was living the dream, and as far as they would be concerned, the dream that I thought I was living as well. And I discovered that there was more to life out there. And during these formative months, it was then that the idea for what became Accenture Development Partnerships, the business that I would subsequently run in Accenture, the idea of why, and almost an anger as well, a frustration of how much more could I get done if I had my normal team of people there. The need was huge. I was not even scratching the surface in terms of being a volunteer. That was about making myself feel good rather than having a significant impact, I would say. You could ask my former colleagues, but more needed to be done. Why were Arthur Andersen Consulting, PwC, Deloitte at the time conspicuous with their absence in these countries? Because there was not enough money to pay the rates that we would normally charge. So it was these long dark winter nights, I suppose cold winter nights, that in my apartment, thinking about, could we turn the business model on its head of consulting? Could we create not just a few volunteers in a CSR program, but actually a business within a business?
People,
Corporate social responsibility. Yeah, we consultants love our jargon, but is there a business model that could make this sustainable? Consultancies will take bright people, well qualified, pay them well, add on a margin, and put fees out there. If that was turned on its head and we could say, well, maybe people would work for less salary. The idea was, could people maybe work on half their salary? There was I on 90% reduction. Maybe people would work on half. Maybe Accenture would give up profit on work that was about poverty or in certain countries that weren't commercial markets. And maybe we could actually get development organisations, NGOs, to buy services rather than expect it pro bono or free of charge. The whole consulting industry has tended to pride itself on giving away bits of free resource when they have people that are not busy, then maybe we give them to a charity. That needed to be scaled and industrialised. So the economics on the back of a fag packet or cigarette packet, I felt that we could actually get rates down to about 10 to 20% of the normal rates if we forwent margin and a lot of salary. And so that was the idea was born at that point.
In those long dark nights.
Well, in those long dark nights, and then I guess the thing that I write a bit about in the book that you'll have read. Well, how do you take an idea and sell it into leadership? I was coming back having had this extreme experience, about to go back into my normal job, and it was actually in a cafe in Thessaloniki on the way home. I was going home after a bit of luxury time in Greece, which was next door, and just wrote a sort of fictitious 2-page article in a fictitious Financial Times, I think, set in the future about Accenture's chairman launching this non-profit group, this social enterprise, corporate social enterprise in Accenture. And well, it wasn't lots of PowerPoint, it wasn't a financial plan in Excel, all that stuff followed, but the idea was crystallized into a fake press article and got it sent to the chairman, which led to a breakfast, which led to a discussion, which led to a feasibility study, which led to a launch of what became my career over the next 15 years.
Right. And so the chairman, and it was the chairman receives this.
I didn't know who. I knew the chairman by reputation.
Yeah.
Vernon Ellis, Sir Vernon Ellis now, who again I didn't know at the time. I know him very, very well now, and he was a huge source of support. But the UK head, Willie Jameson at the time, was the person that had supported the VSO programme, allowing a bunch of us to go to different countries. So I went to him first had a debrief chat when I came back, showed him my article and said, look, I'm having some thoughts, what do you think? And he went, interesting, I'll send it on to Vernon on your behalf. Yeah, no, absolutely. I wouldn't have had any relationship. So, yeah, getting to the top.
You worked the hierarchy.
Well, it worked itself. It worked itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there is a theme probably
no,
around how these things emerge. You know,
it's great. You're correct. You're correcting my bias to always want to make it about the individual sort of hero, right? It was a number of factors. The fact this guy backed it.
Well, please continue with your individual hero line of question. That's great and flattering. But no, the reality is it wasn't that. I don't know where. I don't think I asked. I think he suggested this needs to go higher up, and I will arrange a breakfast, which he did, which I almost slept in for. But that's a whole other thing. But it's amazing that you can get from Ealing to the City of London in 32 minutes if you really are if you're really tight for time.
Right, that's in the book. It's a wonderful moment, isn't it? But you get there.
It wasn't at the time a wonderful moment.
A wonderful story, should I say, not a wonderful moment.
I think I lived my whole business career like running 5 or 10 minutes behind time and rushing around. That's a big lesson learned. I'm trying not to do that. I think I was even early for this interview, but
yes, you were indeed. Yes, it was us who was running late this morning.
But no, I did spend a long time cramming and pushing and planning and doing these things, which we all do, achieving, delivering. And sometimes it's better to let go, but anyway, we can come back to that.
Right, yeah, because that does chime with, well, we'll get to what happened later in the story. So the chairman reads this fake FT article. Then
I'll speed it along a little bit. I'll give you the I guess what happened next. He told me subsequently. So the breakfast happened, almost didn't happen at all, and I don't know what would have happened in my life if that hadn't. It would have been very, very embarrassing, that big break. But again, my point being, these big shifts in life can balance on a knife edge.
Yeah.
And he recalled the meeting where he said, I'm used to people coming into my office, senior partners he would obviously have, mostly rather than me as whatever I was, a senior manager. But they would come in asking for a pay rise or a promotion or whatever. I wasn't used to somebody coming along asking for a pay cut. So here was I with this concept, this dream, saying I think I and these other people would be interested in working for less salary if we were able to do this work. I believe that Accenture has the capabilities, because we'd become Accenture at that point. I went away with Anderson Consulting and it IPO'd in 2001 when I came back. So I believe Accenture would be able to really have an impact here, and that we could scale and industrialize the corporate volunteering thing into a business, a social business. And that caught his attention. And I think I maybe gave him a fictitious sir in the article, which subsequently became true, but apocryphal. And he said, well, great, I'll need a bit more information. So we went off for 6 months with a group of volunteers, and got enough information to then get a budget for a feasibility study. So it was creeping commitment. I don't ever remember there was any particular gating process. We just gradually kept going, and the feasibility study, where I grabbed and borrowed a few people to work full time on this project, it highlighted we were looking at, would NGOs buy services from Accenture at what kind of price point? Would the economics add up? So a bit more detail in the financial plan. But most interestingly, would there be enough interest in this kind of work? And we surveyed and took a pulse of people, several thousand people, and we correlated between levels of performance and levels of interest. And we found that the performance curve was skewed, or the levels of interest were skewed towards the higher performing people. And that was very much the business case, the original business case, to say, look, the people we want to attract into the firm, retain in the firm, develop, are people who this proposition really resonates with. And then we were off to the races. pilot in 2002, we launched in 2003, and the program scaled. And so the work we were doing, just to give people a flavour, people often ask, well, what the hell would business consultants with laptops know about development? And not very much is or was the answer. But we do know about IT. We do know about how supply chain or logistics could be applied to getting medicines the last mile in the distribution chain. We know about HR or human capital development, change management, leadership development, the things that you're about. How can we use the mobile phone or e-learning platforms to train nurses or doctors more quickly, more cheaply? So you can bring that business and technology expertise and complement it with the expertise that the clients, the NGOs, that's what we mostly worked with, non-governmental organisations, charities. So Oxfam, Save the Children, World Vision weren't initially clients. It was quite difficult in the early days, but over a few years, they all became clients of ours and would all buy our services because they were paying £1 for what would, or $1 for what would normally cost £10 or $10 in the commercial rates. That was the sort of proposition to make that work. And so yes, it scaled. We doubled in size every year for the first few years. The naysayers were amazed. You know, I had plenty of people saying, you know, you're nuts. You're crazy to think people are going to actually take a salary reduction and do this stuff. Telling me I was nuts was probably they may feel vindicated by that later on, but that's a spoiler alert. But people did. They were coming in droves. And fast forward to today.
And was it true that, so you did this survey and it suggested that the highest performers were those who were most likely to take the salary cut and do this purpose-driven work? Did that turn out to be true in reality? Yeah.
And we targeted and made the program available, and there was you needed to be average or above in the higher performance half of the company to be eligible. So there's various eligible criteria. You needed to have minimum of several years experience in the firm, be a good performer, be available at the time that we needed you. So we were matching skills and putting people into teams to do projects. It wasn't one person here and one person there. It was teams, like we would, very much like a normal consulting engagement. And I was just going to say that the interest is incredible. I mean, today there's 45,000 people on the kind of waiting list, the interest list.
Well, see, this is what's fascinating to me. So we have this image of people joining firms like this because they want, and certainly what was one of my biggest motivations to join a similar firm was, you know, the high salary and the status and so on. And yet it's the people who you might consider to be those who are performing the highest because they want to chase this dream of more money and status and so on, who are actually most motivated to do work at a lower salary, which perhaps doesn't have the same status. So there's an interesting seeming paradox.
It's not everyone. I can imagine people sitting here, you know, thinking, you know, should I feel bad that I like getting paid a good salary? Should I feel bad because I've got a flash car or a nice lifestyle? Not that at all. I mean, I've been there. But I do think there is some juxtaposition going on there, that the old levers of pay more, promote, all of these different incentives that we had when I was starting my career in the kind of early 90s or whatever, they are no longer as applicable. I think there's still hygiene factors in there, but I think that the company or companies, particularly in the consulting industry, that really manages to tap into this whole purpose and meaning of work, when people can find themselves doing something and being part of something that is bigger than themselves, that is more than just a pay rise, that is feeling, you know, if what you're doing is actually about life or death, you can go back and say, yeah, I did the platform that helped to train 10,000 nurses, or I worked on this project to reduce the lead time of essential medicines in Africa from 30 days down to 3. Wow, you know, that's something you want to talk about. That's something you feel proud to say you did. And the fact you were on half salary for a period of time, it's manageable. So there's something that I think there is a shift. Yes, everyone talks about the millennials, but I do think that there is definitely a broad shift in what people are wanting and what people are motivated by.
Right. Which actually, I don't know if you've come across the work of Jeremy Rifkin, the zero marginal cost economist.
Right. Yeah.
But he cites studies where there's the not-for-profits in terms of growth of employment of people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a higher growth rate amongst not-for-profits than for-profits right now. Right.
Interesting.
So that they're actually taking, in terms of growth, not in terms of absolute numbers, in terms of growth, they're taking more of the.
Interesting. There's something going on, and there's I mean, we can get into complexities here about how I think the boundaries that used to exist between the for-profit and the non-profit and the public and the private. Not only are they blurring, I fundamentally believe that they are being redefined, and that I would like to see them continue to be redefined, so that we will see that business can have a role in areas that were perhaps previously the hallowed turf of the UN or charities. Yes, some people will go over into charities, but I think there will be some charities will morph a bit into different types of organisation, be a bit more commercial. Some businesses will morph away from short-term profit maximisation to bringing their core competencies, capabilities, investment, technology, people towards starting to innovate to solve social problems, profitably perhaps. But these sustainable development goals that the UN set out, these goals that we're trying to achieve by 2030, that we would have considered to be the corporate social responsibility or the foundation's domain or the UN's domain, these are, I think, mouth-watering propositions for business if they rethink business models, if they rethink short-term profit maximisation. But it's not a philanthropic agenda. It is, I think, a commercial agenda. How we feed the next billion, provide access to water, sanitation, energy, education, nutrition, healthcare. For me, these are opportunities to do things in a fundamentally different way, at scale. And that for me is what's really exciting, and that's where I think younger people going into business, I would love to. I think they would aspire to have a career in business that is doing that kind of thing. That is, the brightest and best do care about that kind of thing, and I maybe it's a pipe dream. I don't know. I'm maybe a bit idealistic, but I really do hope that business has the opportunity to start moving into that space.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And the other thing that comes to mind is Elon Musk setting up the AI company in the States. He made it a non-for-profit because he felt like that was the best way to attract talent, interestingly, right? And where these are some of the best paid engineers in the world, they're prepared to come and work for a non-for-profit.
And it's funny, I mean, again, Elon Musk, we talk about him there. He's not talked about in the context of being a social entrepreneur. We don't label him that and put him on a pedestal. He's on a pedestal for other reasons. But to my mind, he is probably the most successful social entrepreneur out there in terms of using the car industry or disrupting the car industry to use a new business model to affect climate change in that way. And it's very interesting, I read just at the weekend that he's now thinking about potentially taking Tesla back private again. I don't know whether you saw that.
Yeah.
Because he's just getting so fed up with the short-termism of markets. And I think it's very, very interesting there about how successful he has been in such a short space of time, and how difficult that is to do when you have this markets hungry for one thing and one thing only, and that's short-term profits.
Right. And was that an issue with Accenture, because they'd IPO'd before this had happened?
They did. So back on the Accenture development partnerships that I was growing, yes, things I think did change a little bit when the firm moved from being a partnership to being a publicly listed company, and the share price has gone from 2001, it's gone up 16-fold or something. It's been an incredibly commercial machine. I didn't know anything different in terms of my ADP days. I was working in the commercial business when it was a partnership. The sense was there was more nice events and annual celebrations in the summer or at Christmas time and things. It became a little bit more frugal, I would say, on costs like that. But for growing this business, it didn't really make a difference for me. We had to have a business case, and the business case was very much originally around people and attracting people, retaining people, leadership development, giving people that different experience. Yes, we were having also a broad halo effect on the PR front, but I was very clear I did not want marketing to seize this and just use us as a PR tool. We were doing this for the right reasons. I didn't want to undermine the investment that people were making in salary sacrifice. The business case evolved then as well, because not only were we not making a loss, so we were self-sustaining, scalable. We weren't needing a handout, or we only needed a very small handout to get going. But it evolved because as we continued after 5, 6, 7 years, after being told I was this intrapreneur, I suppose, and we got more awards and things were going well, we started to bring in commercial clients into partnerships and coalitions. So rather than us just working with one NGO in one country to do one project, we try and convene coalitions around a particular issue. How can we get vaccines the last mile in Tanzania? Let's bring in the Global Fund, Gates funding, Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola's inventory management expertise and routing and mappings locally. And we'd provide the glue, I suppose, in terms of people, and the supply chain expertise in terms of people. Or how can we get Unilever and Oxfam working together on more smallholder farmers in Unilever's value chain? Barclays and a number of NGOs to get microfinance down to the village level. So there was this really beautiful space that we were in, whereby we were able to work on a not-for-loss basis with some of our most important clients to jointly have an impact that none of us could have individually. And again, that was the next inflection point, and we really get going.
Once you found that way to bring in another whole sector.
Absolutely. So the business case was multifaceted by that time. I can't tell you whether, as doing that work with Coke and having over 3 years, I think we probably had 60 or 70 people working with Coke on the ground in several different countries on half salary, giving hundreds of thousands of dollars in kind from our employees. It didn't do the commercial relationship, any harm at all. It was the thing that the CEO of Coke wanted to talk about at UN meetings and things. I can't tell you it sold the next big IT system to Coke, but it definitely strengthened the relationship. And this was always a source of, I guess, frustration for me, or continues to be a source of frustration, in that we have this naive view in business of just looking at, project A makes $1, project B makes $10, project B must be best. But if project A is $1, let's say no dollars, but has a whole bunch of other things, 32% reduction in high performer attrition, INSEAD claimed we had, X number of hits in terms of tier 1 newspaper articles, leadership development benefits, all these other kind of things, it would outweigh, but people tend to go for the commercially, the business case that has the headline number on it, and tend to ignore some of these more intangible things, and that's hard. That's difficult. And you mentioned to get more nuanced, I think, in terms of how we evaluate business, and not just look at one hard number. We need to look at many other things and weigh them up.
Yeah. Because there's a moment in your book where you talk about getting your performance evaluation, and you get a sort of average grade, right? And then you list off all of these achievements from ADP. And
I was probably a bit of an obnoxious conversation, but it was frustrating in the first couple of years, because I was still in the same peer group, if you will, that were out doing commercial things, and it was comparing apples with not even oranges. I wouldn't imagine. It was probably something completely different, and so my point being, when we want to do new innovations or create new business models, we need to think about how we get the right incentive mechanisms and reward mechanisms. If you hold people to be accountable to their old objectives that they agreed at the beginning of the year, or the other KPIs, my KPIs were 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So of course you're going to get dinged when it comes to the annual appraisal round. So somehow we need to ensure that that these issues don't stifle innovation. It's part of what I term in the book the corporate immune system. You have these antibodies, whether it's around your own performance or whether it's around controls and checks and balances in the business that is trying to keep the business on the commercial path, safely, securely going down the tram lines of growing bigger and more profitable. And if you're this way, the antibodies are going to come and attack you, as they did.
Right. Yeah. And so how did you, because you continued to grow ADP, you continued to progress in the firm. What were the tools, the weapons you used to keep the immune system at bay?
Very much guerrilla tactics, I suppose, in that I had a great team of people around about me. I was very fortunate. People say, "Oh, you grew a great team." It kind of grew itself. Having that purpose thing was really a lightning rod towards that was attracting people from all around the business in different countries. We had a management team that grew over time, and then many people on projects around the world. So several hundred people, would be used in a particular year, which is a very small part of Accenture, but we were getting reasonably significant. And yes, promotions would come in. They were able to say, "Okay, great, you've done something good." I would get a promotion. We'd maybe get a nice award. So things were going well. We had a board or an advisory group internally with some externals as well that allowed our leadership to see what we were doing. And so there was more awareness, more understanding of what we were doing, more success stories. But we'd also then hit up against these barriers. "Oh, you shouldn't be working in Ethiopia because of the fact we don't have a commercial entity there. It could be a risk. Should you be doing that project for 50,000 there?" We'd have to quite often have people giving us a benefit of a doubt. So we would be friendly with people in legal and commercial, or people in the finance department, and try and get people to waive a particular control or a particular policy. And when we were relatively small, that was easy for them to do. If someone would come down hard on us, we'd try and get one of our person from the board to go and have a chat with them and speak to them. We'd break policies, and just, again, back to this asking forgiveness thing as well. So we had momentum, we were going, we were gung-ho, we had some support. So yeah, we were blazing a bit of a trail. But it wasn't always easy. And then when you get to a certain size, your head gets over the parapet, and perhaps some of you can no longer get exclusions or exemptions from the policies. You become compliant, or we did end up having to become compliant.
Right.
This was after being 10 years in or something like that. And there was changes of leadership as well, which is difficult because some of your early supporters, of course, move on and retire, and new people come in and ask new questions.
Right.
Or the same question again that you have to, you thought you'd put to bed something in 2003 and it comes up again in 2007 and again in 2011. So it's continually trying to resell the business case, which is difficult.
Right. And this is, well, we're starting to get to the point in the book where there's a moment for you, and in the lead up to that, you're getting more pressure, and there's a sort of character in the book, right, who's sort of very aggressively.
Yeah, I have every book needs a nemesis character, so we may as well get to that. So it's been a roller coaster journey. I mentioned to you from the tiny sparks of this wasn't a planned career. None of my career, I think, has been very planned at all, or when it's been most successful, it's probably when it's gone completely off piste. And we got to this certain size and scale, and I was loving my job. It was great, but over a period, this is around 2014, it was getting harder. There was a nemesis character.
You call him
sort of the bullying. Frank. Yeah, I think Frank. Frank is his name. He may or may not be a man. He may or may not be. Well, he's certainly not called Frank, and he may or may not be German. But this person's been disguised. But it's a real character, and I think represents. There's most businesses, I believe, and many people tell me that they have a Frank in their business. So it's fairly old school, person that's got up to a very senior level in the firm based on, I would say, business 1.0. Tight ship, run the numbers, focus on the profit, push people hard, don't suffer fools gladly. Was he any more harsh than a tough show of The Apprentice with dare I say, a Donald Trump, or you didn't think you could get through this interview without mentioning there, but that kind of what makes good TV can also be kind of quite brass stuff.
Yeah.
But no, I think there are people that can really chew up people in business and put them under undue pressure and think that they are doing the right thing by the firm, think that they are just doing their job well, think that everyone, because it's worked for me and I've got to this level, then you should work in the same way. And I sincerely hope that that kind of attitude of business will gradually be replaced by a new type of leader that gets more about the purpose stuff, gets more that business is not just about money, that it isn't about chewing people up and beating them up or embarrassing them in front of others. I'm not putting the blame for what happened to me on this one individual's shoulders, not at all. It was a combination of factors, some of them no doubt self-inflicted. But by late 2014, I was frustrated, I was losing some of my best team members. The more I saw the potential for us to do so much more than we were doing, the less I seemed to have the leadership support. So it was like an elastic band almost. I was seeing this potential. Accenture by that time had grown to be a 400,000 person organisation, working in 100 countries around the world with 6,000 commercial clients. We had all the non-profit relationships and UN relationships. You had technology and digital disruption taking over and millennials wanting purpose in their careers. If we could get the choreography around these things right, then I felt that we could do incredible things at scale, that we could have really gone to a different level. But I was still trying to sell the business case 1.0 and not very successfully, I suppose. And that pressure became, it was pretty tough.
And at the moment of your breakdown, you were working incredibly long hours, sweating over a potential presentation to the board.
Yeah, no, I guess I'm not sure I was working any harder than I had been. I had, when you're so motivated by what you're doing, I'd loved the job I was doing, and many, I think, all the team did as well. You're working for a goal, you're working for a purpose. There is no boundary between, 5 o'clock comes, you finish job, and you start your private life. These things became completely converged, if you will. It was a 24/7 vocation to a certain extent. And then when things are getting hard, it is difficult. And I will never really know exactly what happened, but the trigger point that I talk about in the book was a trip to India. And I was on a leadership retreat with an organisation called Leaders Quest, which takes people, fantastic program, takes people away from their day-to-day environment and gives them, I guess, in a week what I had for the year in Macedonia. So a very intensive week-long program. This was in India. And I came back from that, very good experience, but I thought I'd got a flu to begin with. And the flu then became a deep fever. I was back in Switzerland where I live. And then the fever triggered a manic episode that lasted about a week. I wasn't sleeping, I was having ideas, I was having flow. I was dictating these ideas into my iPhone, I was dictating a letter to the CEO, I was dictating my resignation letter to prove to myself that I could leave the firm. And this all it snowballed over the course of a week or so, and then I was back in Scotland as it happened to see some friends for a friend's dad's funeral, and these friends said, "Hang on a minute, why are you recording things?" I was taking pictures, I was filming, I was the reality and illusion had blurred. They took me to get a checkup in the hospital as opposed to going to the funeral that we'd intended to. So you had 3 large Scottish blokes in black ties and suits marching down. I was frog marched down to a hospital in Glasgow, and I ended up staying 5 days and 5 nights in a psychiatric ward there. which is where the book is set, in this ward, wondering what the hell happened. So I can smile and laugh about it now a little bit, because I've been lucky. There's been no repetition since then. I had no history of mental illness, but I found it fascinating at the time. And was it a burnout? Was it a breakdown? Was it had India caused a spiritual awakening of some kind? Who knows? But yeah, that's what happened.
Right.
And that was the trigger for the book.
Right. And you're now no longer with Accenture, right?
I left 2016. Yeah, I went back briefly, and then decided to go away and travel the world and write the book. So,
right. Yeah. And ADP continues to.
Accenture Development Partnerships is continuing, and there's some of the great people that I have the pleasure to work with are keeping it going. I've tried not to backseat drive. It's continuing. It's doing some great things. Is it doing everything that I'd hoped it would? Has it gone to that kind of vision that I alluded to? No, not yet. I don't think. I think it could do still so much more if the will was there. But it's doing great stuff. It's surviving without me. Good.
Right. And so, to what extent have you been filling your time seeking to find answers to this episode, or versus other work that you now do?
I guess a lot of the time in since that November, December 2014 incident, the incident as I call it in the book with a capital I, I took the time and had the luxury to take a bit of a break. Not everyone can maybe do that, depending on personal circumstances and things, but I was able to do that and travel the world with a computer and a glass of wine, usually in the other hand, and write and read and go on various courses and events and try and understand a little bit about what was happening. And it's been a bit of a journey of self-discovery and trying to get out of what has been, I guess, there's a very strong gravitational pull to the past and what I was doing in the past. And I think many people find that it's difficult to get off a hamster wheel. Even if it's a hamster wheel I was very happy being on, I was still defined by Accenture Development Partnerships. That was my job, that was my role, that was my life. And then I wanted to kind of escape that pool and drift into something a bit different while writing a book. And you find yourself, in the strangest places with the most fascinating people. I was in Burning Man last year, which I'd never even heard of. And, I've been at events with people I would have never have come across, and it's been absolutely fascinating and really good fun. Who knows, there may well be another book in that at some point, but I'm too busy trying to promote the first book. But all of this, what I'm telling you now, doesn't, the book has stopped at the 2014 period, but it's been fabulous. And I guess the key point I would say is it's letting go of the steering wheel. I've been sort of more floating rather than driving and steering and planning. I managed to get rid of that, and so allowing things to emerge, allowing new possibilities to open up.
Yeah,
I think we are all as individuals much more complex, broader human beings than we are told. We get put into a box, or put ourselves into a box of our career or what we're good at or what we do as a job, and yet there is so much more that we could turn ourselves to if we again allow things to come.
And are there particular insights about yourself that you've discovered during this floating period that perhaps were hidden from your view before?
Undoubtedly. I'm not sure how much I will be prepared to go into in this interview. That will definitely emerge, Richard, but definitely doing a lot of work on identity, finding out we all have shadow sides and behaviours that have served us well in our lives up until now, and then when you start to go out of your comfort zone and challenge these things and see why you behave in a certain way, why I would behave, or why I had certain habits, or things that I would just test and try and do things differently, and be open to things that I would have thought were ridiculous or a bit too kumbaya, or spirituality is something that kind of slightly would freak me out in the past, is intriguing me, and I am completely agnostic about why things happen or where we're all going. But I've been able to approach this with a new kind of open mind, and the more I go in with an open mind, the more I find things intrigue me. I'm very interested in even Jungian terms like synchronicity and this notion of meaningful coincidences happening. I found that a lot in the last few years, and probably that's as much as I'll say at the moment. But it's fascinating, and it's not from any religious point of view or anything else than that. It's just I'm increasingly curious as to why we're here and how our lives are quite emergent, and our life stories are quite emergent, and that we can change how things happen just by changing the narrative of our own lives to a certain extent.
And is there anything that you've picked up in terms of an evolution of your own narrative? Is there anything changing in the narrative of Gib?
Oh, most definitely. But I'm letting it emerge. I had thought I would jump back into the corporate world. I thought I would maybe go and do an ADP type thing on the outside and bring in people from other consultancies. And I'm not doing that, and it's difficult because people do expect you to go back into this world. People will tell you, people project that, your network will go cold, your contacts will go cold. Shouldn't you be doing this? People would expect you to, your name's written all over this job description that they'll send you. But gradually, as someone once said, I think your name has changed. The name or who you are has been evolving over time for me. So much so, I'm tomorrow hoping to complete on a derelict farm on an island in Scotland that I'm hoping to create a decelerator, a business decelerator that will kind of, bring business people, entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs hopefully, into connection with artists, nature, maybe musicians, and really sort of blend the creative sides and the artistic sides of our personalities with the more technical sides of things. And so that's the dream, and it's at the moment a pile of bricks in 5 acres in Scotland that I bought for buying for what you would pay for a garage in London, but we'll see. So I guess that I couldn't have seen coming, and I love these things that are just emergent. The opportunity came, and I'm going after it. So if you ask me where I'll be in a year's time or 5 years' time, I have absolutely no idea. But I hope that it's about following intuition and doing what I feel is right. The North Star remains the same. It's about challenging and trying to change business and how we think about business in society. But how to get there and the route may well change a lot.
Right. Is there anything in terms of personal practices that have shifted or habits that you've...
I do a bit of yoga now.
Right.
I thought it was a spectator sport. Can I say that? No, probably not. In my business years, but I would, someone who liked active sports and martial arts and things, I thought yoga was a little bit. But I love yoga, and I want to do more in terms of mindfulness and meditation. I believe that's something that a lot of people get a lot of benefit out of. I eat better, I drink a bit less. So it's been a wake-up call from that point of view of changing life's practices and not having everything on the clock. Thinking about what I do next, and thinking about these kind of telic indicators that are, I need to do this to achieve that, to achieve this, to get me to wherever. It's more just, focusing on the being, not just the doing.
Right.
There's so many people are so obsessed with what they're doing, but they've no idea where they're going.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah.
Stumped.
Well, I think it's an interesting idea that to just allow the next thing that needs to be done to emerge, as opposed to having the plan.
Yes, that's kind of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's scary and it's difficult, but it's allowing, whatever this purpose is, and following intuition more and more, rather than the voices of what people believe you should be doing, or what the voices in your own head as to what you think you should be doing. And I think the possibilities then of there's the motorway or the piece very obviously ahead of you, but there's a little pinging in the back of the head saying maybe you should be going this way in this direction. Buy a farm in Scotland, turn it into a thing, or go and do an interview with Richard, or whatever it happens to be. Big things, little things, but just listening to that voice and allowing that little pinging of, because that's really what happened, I suppose, in the early stages. I found myself going off onto this journey, this adventure, crossing this threshold of fear that we have these lines of, I shouldn't do that because what will people think? How will it affect my career? What should I do? I found that if you do manage to conquer that fear and cross that threshold, then doors open up that you can otherwise have happened. Opportunities come into your way and you get help that you wouldn't have expected. So a little bit of Joseph Campbell-esque, I would say, but I think it's fascinating. Or Otto Scharmer, I think, is into a lot of these things with Theory U. I've been in a Theory U course as one of the many things that I've been able to do over the last few years.
And in a nutshell, for people, Theory U,
his book is Leading from the Emerging Future, so it's all about this letting go. It's based on quite Eastern principles, I think, of letting go of the old downloads of what we're told and what we believe, getting a space of stillness and quietness, where you can then allow that inner voice to emerge, and that inner purpose to emerge. I can't probably do more justice to it than that in this interview, but I would recommend Dr. Scharmer, Theory U. There's a big MOOC, I think, one of these big online courses that they're running, and it's worth people looking into. Read the book as well.
And what's emerging for me here, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that but in the latter stages of your work with Accenture development partners within Accenture, were you more on a track of this is what I should be doing?
I never questioned it at that time. That I thought I was so all in on Accenture development partnerships. There was no other job I wanted, internally, externally. This was my thing. This was what I discovered what I felt I was meant to be. I was put on this planet to do. And I was so invested in it that I think it ultimately became all-consuming and all-defining. And then what happened. And it's been a bit of a kind of stumbled out of that environment into something new. But it's whatever happens, sometimes is it for a reason, I believe.
Right. Yeah.
That's essentially where I'm going.
Yeah. Well, and fascinating to see.
And the point is that actually things that can be seen as crises or problems are often opportunities for reevaluation and are these crucible moments that you can pivot on and change direction. So what happened, uncomfortable as it may have been, was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, I think. And where I'm at now is I'm very happy. Where I'm at now, where I'm going, I have no idea.
No, that maybe that's the message here. Where I'm going, I've got no idea. What a bold thing to say,
and that's fine. Just trusting to a certain extent, trusting again that not looking too far ahead or saying that success will be this or that, or setting ourselves these goals, but allowing things day by day to emerge. And there will always be, I think, these thresholds of could I do this? Should I do this? Can I do this? Of holding back. But then I think you're almost spiraling as you take them on or take the challenges on. It's a kind of journey of life, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I can feel a visceral reaction just to taking on that idea of, well, what will happen will happen. We could say it in a cliched moment, but the way that you're delivering the message with
such sort of authenticity is, I can really feel that's a scary prospect.
But
for
that's
me,
3 years. That's 3 years into a process, and I wouldn't have been saying this 3-4 years ago at all. And it goes back to a bit about, we talked about hero things back at the beginning of the interview. This is Joseph Campbell. Every Hollywood story, the good films follow a sort of narrative of a hero's journey or heroine's journey that Joseph Campbell popularised and that George Lucas made famous with Star Wars and things. You can be commercialised, you could say, but there is a standard template that people can look up on Wikipedia of being in your normal world and having a call to adventure and heeding that call and then going into a sort of almost supernatural world. A bit esoteric, but it is you'll see that the Hollywood themes and the good stories follow that journey, and then this return back to the hero comes back to with the boon or whatever they've discovered on their journey. And Campbell makes out that we all are the heroes in our own lives, and that we will all have these voices or calls that we will either heed or suppress. And do you want to take it on? Do you want to take on? What is the adventure for you? For you, it's something different from what it is for me and for people listening. But it's fascinating.
And thrilling. This is the other thing I'm getting now. It's an exhilarating idea to think that I completely let go and just allow the next thing to emerge.
Yes, scary and exhilarating. Absolutely. It's really trusting and you will get told you're nuts. You will get told you should be doing this. And it's just having that belief that you're on the right track, that you're
trusting in
intuition. In the intuition in some way, whatever that intuition is, wherever it comes from.
Right.
Is it something inside the head? Is it? I have no idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Are we all on this planet as walking about as individual hard drives, or is there something a little bit more connected?
Right.
Who knows? I don't want to speculate, but these are things I find fascinating as to how we do connect and interrelate. And some of these, as I say, coincidences that seem to happen when you let go.
Right. Fascinating.
Okay. I'm sure we wouldn't probably even have having this conversation if it wasn't for letting go. But there you are.
Yeah, receiving a somewhat random email to come on a podcast in London. Okay, I know that you've got a packed day here in London, so we're going to need to let you go. But thank you so much for your honesty, and it's been a thrilling conversation. I mean that. Really, it's been fantastic. So
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And for people who want to learn more about you, it's the website.
There's a website, gibbulloch.com, which should be updated more regularly than it is. But I'd also, if what we've discussed is of interest to people, and I think the book, The Intrapreneur, Confessions of a Corporate Insurgent, available in all good bookstores, or more likely on Amazon.
Which I can highly recommend.
Oh, thank you, Richard. You're too kind.
No,
I hope people enjoy it.
Very, very good. Very good story.
Thank you
okay. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.